week's episode of Gangsta, we finally get to learn that Warwick has a lot in common with Rob Schneider, because just like Deuce Bigalow, he is a male gigolo. This week's episode of Gangsta is going to take us into the underbelly of Ergastalum, where we get to learn a little bit more about the complexity of Warwick and a little bit about his past. At the beginning of this week's episode, we have this very disturbing scene where there's this one young boy who's literally watching his family or his father being murdered by an assailant with a katana blade. I actually believe this is going to be the very first time when Warwick and Nicholas meet each other, but they're not getting into that quite yet. Something to note about this sword-wielding assailant is the fact that he does seem to be wearing a dog tag or necklace-type object, and he also seems to have these weird, code words or these, code numbers that are actually on his back, kind of like a tattoo. But I'm not quite sure if this is Nicholas quite yet, and it's kind of hard to tell because later on in the episode we get to learn that both Warwick and Nicholas have these tribal tattoos on their back, and they could be simply just covering up all of that. Why they decided to work together after seeing his family killed in that weird bloody massacre, I'm not really sure. We're going to have to learn a little bit more about that. But this week's episode was really just getting to learn a little bit more about Warwick, his past, and the fact that he is a male gigolo. He's one of the reasons why their business is able to exist is because he's always just having sex. Getting laid. Doing the dirty. Park the porpoise. Wax that shit. We also get to see what just goes on in a normal day in the lives of Nicholas and Warwick as they're going around delivering medication from Dr. Theo, and it also seems like they're going to be running guns as well. It's very subtly hinted at the very beginning of this week's episode. Along for the ride, of course, is Alex, and Alex is basically like the physical representation of the audience. We're there with her. We're trying to see how this entire world is going to open up to us as she is seeing it for the very first time. There's a scene where Nicholas, Warwick, and Alex end up going to this old prostitution place which is run by this big woman by the name of Big Mama. This is apparently where Warwick used to work when he was very young. He claims he was only about 13 or 14 at the time, and he's been doing that for a very long period of time, which is very disturbing and kind of messed up, and he just can't seem to leave the business. Despite that, he's very good at what he does. One of the things that I think is more interesting about this episode is when they actually go to this whorehouse. Warwick is delivering this medication, which apparently is for a female Twilight. And there's a scene where Nicholas goes to visit this unknown female, and we don't really get to see anything of that. We get to see that they seem to be embracing each other, or she seems to be touching his face, almost as if they have some sort of romantic relationship. I'm not really sure where this is heading, but it's adding a little more depth to these characters, and I can't wait to learn where it's going. Otherwise, this was still a very simple episode, just getting to see what a normal day in the life of Warwick and Nicholas and Alex is going to be like when they're not just murdering people. And that's not to say that there isn't a little bit of action and violence in this episode. They also seem to be working with that one gangster who goes by the name of Monroe, and they seem to be doing a little bit of cleaning up in the streets. Again, just demonstrating that this show is not for freaking children. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Gangsta? A very simple episode, an episode that's just going to show us what these characters are all about and the complexities behind them. Warwick is arguably becoming one of my favorite characters from the show, but only because of the mysteriousness of his past and how it's all going to tie into Nicholas as well, because that opening scene is really important, and there's even a scene throughout the entire episode where everybody's reading the newspaper, and they're recalling this story that happened 22 years ago about this family that was murdered, which again, I believe is Warwick's family, and this is probably how he met Nicholas. I just want to know why they're working together, like if this was part of their plan. Maybe Nicholas didn't want to do this. Maybe he was being brainwashed. Maybe he was being controlled, and they ended up just working together because that's all he had left. I'm not really sure. It's really all just done in these weird flashbacks which don't give us a lot of information, especially at the very end of the episode when Nicholas seems to have these weird, almost like PTSD flashbacks to when he was freaking out and killing this family. All I know is it's really interesting stuff, but on the technical side of things, it was an okay episode. If there's one thing I wish they would do for the series, is if they would make things look just a little better in terms of the backgrounds. Everything's just brown and gray. They could really take advantage of this setting and show us a really beautiful European city, but they're not doing too much with it. But again, this could be a stylistic choice just to show how gritty this world really is. Despite despite that, the show is still very engrossing, and I'm still really enjoying it quite a bit, and I'm loving the characters. So, I'm going to give this episode right here a 3 out of 5. Just an okay episode, but something that I think Gangster fans will appreciate. Just getting to know the characters a little bit more and getting to learn a little bit more about them. I'm really interested to see where this series is going to go, and I really hope it picks up soon, because I'm really liking the setting and I love the characters. So, like I said, 3 out of 5 for me, just a fun, average episode of Gangsta. You heard my thoughts about this week's episode, but what about you guys? Did you watch this week's episode of Gangsta? Did you have a favorite scene, a favorite character who showed up? What do you want to see from the rest of this badass Da Hood anime series? That's what I'm talking about. Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with all of your friends. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. And our podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast, which is now on iTunes. If you guys want to download them on iTunes, make sure to check them out. I'll put a link for that in the description box below. We would really appreciate it if you guys actually looked at those and gave them a quick review and gave us a score. We really would like that, so that way our show could get a little bit more exposure and people can see it more. We're really, really excited about this new thing. So thank you guys very much. Make sure to follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.